developing Silent Hill Downpour in the Czech Republic was an experience that I was totally unprepared for. I'm a Los Angeles native, and I've traveled around Europe, but I had never been over to Eastern Europe before. It's 27 hours door-to-door from where I live in Los Angeles over to Vatra's studios, so it's a long way to travel. And when I got there, I found that this was actually, the Southern Moravian region is actually home to some of the most beloved stories that I have from horror fiction. The vampire, Gollum, lots of stories about witchcraft and ghosts. A lot of that folklore actually comes right out of that region. Within driving distance of Vatra Studios, for example, is Elizabeth Bathory's castle. Those of you that are into vampire fiction know that Elizabeth Bathory was the famous blood countess that sacrificed thousands of virgins so that she could bathe in their blood. This is a countryside that is steeped in that kind of horror folklore. And these guys that I work with at Vatra have grown up with these stories their entire lives. This was their bedtime stories. So I felt really confident that the Czechs could definitely pull off horror. And the whole atmosphere around our studio in Brno totally feeds into that. I mean, if you don't get off of our train that takes us to work and you go one stop too far, you end up at the crematorium. If you walk across the street, you'll find that the studio sits right beside a massive Eastern European cemetery. And if you've never been in an Eastern European cemetery, I highly recommend it. It is a creepy place. So the guys at the Vatra studio are totally surrounded by a horror atmosphere 24 hours a day, and that just totally helped us create Silent Hill Downpour. Vatra is a multinational studio. Now, of course, being based in the Czech Republic, a lot of our teammates are homegrown. But we also have people from all over the world that have come to work on Silent Hill and be a part of this great franchise. So besides myself being an American, we also have our writer, Tom Waltz, who's an excellent writer who worked on the really popular Silent Hill graphic novels. We got American composer Dan Licht, who you might know from the Dexter series. We've got him on board as well. We've also have several developers representing the UK, Germany, Russia, South Africa even. So we have quite a few people, a very diverse studio, and those people have all brought their own mythologies and their own folklore that they've grown up with and added that sort of to the DNA of our game. And I think it's really going to come through when you see the various side quests and the different subtle nuances of our story. Now, there was some controversy early on because Downpour wasn't being made by a Japanese developer. But if you look at the entire history of horror fiction, the Japanese have definitely carved out their own niche. They've definitely put a new spin on it and reinvigorated horror at a time when, in the West, in America, we were sort of fixated on serial killers with Freddy Krueger and Jason and things like that. While we were making those slasher films, Japan was making really smart, intelligent psychological horror. Movies such as the original Ringu. I once asked Clive Barker, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen? And he handed me a DVD of a film called Audition. And I've never been the same since. I've never seen any film like Audition ever since that. So the Japanese definitely know horror. But if you look at the whole wide breadth of horror, you'll find that some of the earliest surrealist and expressionist films that came out of Europe created some of the hallmarks of Japanese horror. So the use of contrasting lighting, light and dark, and the use of shadows and the starkness of the environments. A lot of that got its start in European early cinema. Things like the Frenchman Jean Cocteau's films or the original silent Nosferatu from Germany. A lot of that imagery, if you go back and look at those early films, have made their way into Japanese cinema. So the Japanese have definitely put their own totally unique spin on it, which we all adore. But I think you'll find that the Europeans can also do horror. And I think you're going to see with Silent Hill Downpour, may not be a Japanese take on the series, but it's definitely going to be unique, and hopefully it's going to scare the hell out of you.